Now that the 2016 General Assembly session has officially adjourned for the year, we wanted to take a few minutes to recap the major issues that we were involved with. So first off, I wanted to talk about tax conformity. We had a great year with respect to tax conformity. It passed earlier than we've seen in probably the past 5 or 6 years. We conformed fully through December 31st of 2015, including permanent conformity with the enhanced earned income tax credit. One thing we expected to see in this year's conformity legislation but didn't was alignment with the upcoming changes to the federal due dates. And so that is an issue that we'll need to work on moving into next session. In addition to tax conformity, the tax department had several other pieces of legislation that it proposed this year. Some of them were simply codifying things that existed in other places, such as the budget and aligning the withholding due dates with what's in the budget into our statute. However, some of the other legislation had to do with imposing new penalties and restrictions on filing tax returns fraudulently. What we saw by and large with those bills was the penalties pretty much got stripped out of every piece of legislation that they were part of, and some of it didn't even pass at all. So we also followed a few issues this year that are starting to crop up around the country, and Virginia was really no exception. The first thing dealt with regulatory reform, and specifically reducing regulatory burdens of entering professions and the workforce. And we saw this manifest in 2 different ways in Virginia. The first was an attempt to put some more oversight into the regulatory process. Fortunately, we were able to work with the patron to mitigate any unintended consequences to the Virginia Board of Accountancy and the regulatory process that they already have to go through to make any changes in Virginia. So the second regulatory reform bill that we worked on was essentially a ban the box for licensure bill. And the intention of the patron on that bill was, again, to reduce barriers to entry into specifically the trade professions. What she didn't realize until after we talked with her was that the way the bill was initially written, it would have scoped in all regulatory boards in Virginia, including CPAs, attorneys, and all of the medical professions. After our discussion, she decided to ask that the bill be carried over to next year so she can work on focusing it better to accomplish her goals. Speaking of ban the box, we again saw an attempt to ban the box on employment applications for public employees, meaning those who work for state or local governments. 2 bills were introduced again. Both bills did fail in the House this year, so those aren't moving forward. However, they're also part of a larger overall employer mandate kind of trend that we're seeing nationally as well. And it's including other areas such as mandatory paid leave and adjustments to minimum wage. On an issue that made quite a few headlines this year, Virginia became the first state in the country to pass legislation to regulate the fantasy sports industry. CPAs played a small role in this legislation by ensuring that the audit requirement included meets professional standards. Finally, the VSCPA weighed in on 2 items in this year's budget. The first was to provide increased funding to the Community Tax Law Project, which provides pro bono assistance to economically challenged taxpayers. The second budget item provided additional funding to the Virginia Council on Economic Education, specifically for use in training teachers to teach the economics and personal finance class. Thank you for all you do to support the advocacy efforts of the VSCPA, and please let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you with your challenges.